Yeah, fighters. We got a special guest on the podcast. Yeah, honesty. I appreciate you taking the time and jumping on, by the way.
No problem.
So, I was able to do this. So for the listeners that haven't heard the prior podcast with Judy, so Judy and Honesty, you guys are sisters. So I thought it would be a good kind of back-to-back combination because of the stories that you guys have, and I know like we were talking about this before we were recording, is just a lot of listeners out there, especially for our female listeners, that may be intimidated by getting started or just unsure. I thought that you guys could shed some light on your experience and where you guys were at. I think it can impact a lot of people listening that are just not sure about getting the ball rolling. So I appreciate you just taking the time to do that.
No, it's no problem.
So first, looking at a little bit about the before picture, before you kind of started working with Kickoff and with myself, where you were at, we're going to kind of start to paint that picture. And the first question I have is, what were things like before you started working with myself and the app, as far as your fitness routine, health, and kind of where you were feeling?
Well, I had done Whole30 a ton of times, so that's kind of where I started off at, and that was in January. And I was only doing jazzercise with my sister about 2 times a week. So my motivation to work out was like pretty much slim to none. You know, we dance every 2 times a week, but honestly, it's just like about an hour of cardio. And I didn't have anything else implemented into it, minus the diet and just dancing. Minus work. I walk a lot at work. So I'll walk anywhere from 7 to 8 miles of work a day, you know, and that might get my heart rate up. But honestly, that was about it. So, you know, my diet was decent, but it wasn't the greatest. You know, Whole30 is super hard to do, in my opinion. You know, you cut out so much stuff, and then you end up, at the end of the month, you end up craving, you know, the things that you didn't have. And so that was, I think, a conversation that you and I had, that it's okay to have those things every once in a while, but, you know, you can't have them on a consistent basis, and you need to understand that you need to do this amount of work. If you're going to have that, you know, accountability, yes, you can have it, but are you going to burn off the calories from it afterwards? So the thing I did like about the app is, though, you know, yes, I was working out, but it wasn't in an atmosphere where there was any type of accountability for it, though. You know, if I did it, I did it. If I didn't, I did it. The only thing that kept me accountable was my sister, because her and I had a whole conversation in January with her husband leaving, and then was this weird-ass breakup that I had, that we were going to do something different, you know, that what we were doing wasn't working. And then we researched online and came across you guys, and then we decided to, you know, get the same personal trainer so we can have some consistency with one another. And we never had gym memberships before. You know, I remember when I started Jazzercise, I had 2 options when I was living with my sister and her husband. Either I could go to the gym one day with her husband, or I could go to Jazzercise, and I chose Jazzercise with my sister, and I never went to the gym, and that was like 8 years ago. So I had gym membership. I had a gym membership and personal trainer before, but there was really a lot of disconnection of what my daily life was like in comparison to what they expect me to do. So, but we got the gym membership, and honestly, it was just building habits. And I think that's what I liked about it, is that it's realistic, what to expect, and it's not just, well, you're going to do 30 minutes on the elliptical and then you're going to go home. There's none of that. There's exercises that I never have done before. that engage more of like muscles that I didn't even know I had. But they're not even hard. Like, it's like 10 minutes of doing this, and then you'll add some additional stuff in there on some equipment. And it's not super hard, but you could definitely feel it the next day. I'm not gonna lie. Like that's workouts that I never done before. I thought going to jazzercise I would get in shape. That's all I needed. I could walk it off and diet. But no, there's a balance with it though, definitely. But yeah, there's a lot of more accountability and motivation from you guys, or you in general, to get my ass out there and do it. The daily text messages, the stalking to make sure that I'm sleeping. I'm actually getting the right amount of hours of sleep. And the things that I never had a conversation with beforehand with my personal trainer, it was more of like, what do you want to do long term? But it was talking about the day-to-day life.
I think it cut out might have muted you. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think I lost you. I mean, I could see you, but I can't hear you. Hold on. Let's see. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Now I can hear.
I don't know. It's the phone call disconnected. I've only used Zoom one other time the other week to have a meeting with my kid's principal and her special needs teacher. So, I don't know what I was saying. Or we left off at. So.
No worries. I'm gonna circle it back. But honestly, that's why it's always good we can have an edit feature. We don't do it live because there's little hiccups and things that are gonna happen. But you were talking. You had some really great points, honestly. And you actually hit like almost 3 questions in a row back to back. I didn't even have to ask anything. So that made it super easy on me. But you were talking a little bit about not just the, like workouts themselves, but the day-to-day, and looking at not just the accountability side of it, which is definitely something I try and provide, but looking at, hey, if we have something come up this week, or if something else is going on, whether it's looking at sleep, looking at stress levels, looking at all the other variables. And to me, to your point, and something I always try and mention, and even when we talked originally, was the idea of, I don't think there's anything wrong with a trainer in a gym, but I look at the difference of a context of what that provides, like a coach versus a trainer. And even when I work with clients in person, I like to think of it as more as a coaching service, less of a trainer. Because to me, a trainer is someone that you're going to work with, for an hour, X amount of times a week or X amount of times a month. And you don't really hear from them, and they don't really provide additional kind of support. But that's what we try and do with Kickoff in the app. And what I try and do with all of my clients in general is doing that. So to your point, being able to have like, hey, how are we sleeping? How are we recovering? Hey, how's our sciatica feeling? Do we need to adjust around that? What's going on with work this week? What's going on with stress, especially now with everything going on in the world and how stressful it's been? We were even talking about being able to just kind of adapt and roll with the punches, so to speak. So that's what I kind of like wanted to kind of piggyback on, since things changed from looking at not just what was like before and looking at, what problems we're solving now during, but also the impact it's had just on your overall life, which you kind of started to paint that picture, but figured maybe we could dive into a little bit more. And like you said, going to the gym either with your sister or being able to do workouts that are different and have an impact on your body in ways you maybe didn't think it could.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And like that, it's just not things, I guess I was just uneducated when it came to fitness, in a sense of like, if I run for an hour, I'm going to be in shape. And no, it's not that. You got to work there's other things that you need to do on top of that. It's not just running. It's not just the elliptical, or it's not just going to exercise for an hour. And I realized that, and most people think that's going to resolve your issues, but it's not. There's a whole balance with it, Yeah, I couldn't do a push-up before. I could do a push-up now, really realizing that I don't have, like, any muscle tone to my body in a sense, and that there's things that I've never worked before and the thing is that I just never thought about, and I just thought you were going to give me a set of workouts to do, and then you would check in on me, like, this is what you're doing, you better do it, and that's going to be it. But no, it's completely different than my experience from beforehand of what it looked like to have a personal trainer. And I got a sheet of paper of food I couldn't eat, and then they would just talk to me about my form of, like, when I was, like, working out, lifting weights with them. So that was the gist of it. So I don't remember what your question was, but then I just went off on my own there. What was the original question?
I mean, you really spoke to it. It was looking at really just kind of the impact or the change it's had in your life, and all those different pieces of it.
Positivity is the fact that the whole thing that's happened right now, you and I had just talked about this, so, getting myself back on track and telling me that it's okay that I've not been where I need to be, but that's just a process in general. Everybody's going through it. And that, setting up what day-to-day looks like for me, is something that's achievable, that every day is going to be different. We just talked about this, and making sure that my workouts are going to fit what's happening to me at the moment. Is this something that I could do in my living room, Is this not something I could do in my living room? I told you, I said I can't jump too high or can't jump around a lot because I'm on the third floor of an apartment. I think I told you that. We don't have workouts that I do jumping in anymore, Even though the one that you assigned me last night was super weird, where I'm, like, bear crawling in my living room down my hallway. And I'm like, thank God nobody else can see me right now. I like things that, like I said, workouts that I never thought I'd be doing ever, I haven't done a bear crawl since I was in elementary school.
Yeah, primal movements. And that's one of the things that I get excited about that I take for granted sometimes too, from my own perspective is, I've been doing this 13 years now. So I sometimes forget what it's like to be day one, or not even day one, but what it's like to and not that I know that much. I just been doing it long enough, and I listen to really smart people that I'm fortunate enough to learn from and invest in my education and repeat that information back. And I think that's an important insight that you just kind of shared is, hey, you don't have to get super crazy and complex, or it doesn't have to just be running, or it doesn't just have to be the elliptical. It's finding the balance of muscular development and stimulation, whether it's body weighted movements like bear crawls or doing dead bugs or doing other kind of animalistic movements.
Mm-hmm.
If that's how we want, like, that's how I like to refer to them. And even in the app, you'll see in the program, we call them that, but that's exactly it. It's being able to create that. And I'm glad, hopefully, that comes through and impacts you. And I wanted to, like, kind of piggyback that question with, that gives a little bit of how it's kind of changed and impact your life. What have you found similar vein, what have you found the most beneficial for you?
There's stress relief with it, though, honestly. And I'm just because I've been not on track, but I think about how much, in the feeling of stress relief and the feeling of achievement that I've gotten at the end of the day when I have actually done the workout and be like, check, Mike's gonna see this, I did it. There's gratification in that, in a sense, like, that I accomplished it, and it's for me, but, I did it just to say, screw you, I did it anyways. I know I'm not doing the greatest right now. But yeah, that's been I think the biggest thing is because when I started this, I told you I'm not sleeping. There's nothing that's consistent, and that's, I told you I stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't shut my brain off. I didn't know how to make it shut up. And working out as soon as I got home from work, and, well, as soon as I got my kid into bed and I made dinner and then went to the gym, and then coming home and having that consistency was such a big, it was almost like it relieved a lot of stress that I was having, and it put my focus on something completely different from where I was at. We're going to focus on this now. And it was almost like the benefit is that we set almost a weekly goal, though. You always ask me, what do you want to do this week? What do you think is achievable? And I think that was probably one of the favorite things that I liked about this whole thing that we do is that, you ask me, what do I want to accomplish this week? I don't have to look at the bigger goal of like, hey, you need to drop 50 pounds and, this is going to be here in a few months. And then are you achieving that goal? It's no, what are we doing this week? What do you think is realistic for you? What's something small? And so to have that feeling of gratification at the end of the week saying, hey, I got the 7 hours of sleep that I needed. And, it might not be big to somebody, but it's something that's important to you because you're not getting it. That's the biggest thing is that I didn't realize things like that was stressing me out because I was only looking at the larger picture, not feeling like I was accomplishing enough because I wasn't, down, 50 pounds in a month, but there's smaller goals within that bigger goal that you need to look at. And like, that was the biggest thing that stressed me out because I'm only looking at the bigger picture, and then building those small habits, I think, is the biggest thing that you could do when it comes to this. Make any sense? Does that make sense?
100%. I'm gonna kind of like piggyback on what you just said because I think it's such an important point, and I'm glad you kind of like notice and appreciate it in that sense because sometimes it can kind of go without being noticed, which that's neither here nor there. I'm glad though that you pick up on it because I think it's a valuable piece of, like you said, if let's say we want to fast forward 3 months from now, and that's a question I'll ask too is, hey, if we could fast forward 3 months from now, where do we want to be? That's great. We do have that destination. However, reverse engineering that and looking at, okay, if I want to be down X amount of pounds, what habits do I need to instill on a weekly basis to get me there? And ultimately, this week may look different from next week. And like you said, checking in this week, what feels attainable? Because and I don't know about you, but at least for me and what a lot of psychology will support and studies will support and just my own experience is if I said you have to get in 10 workouts next week, or I don't know, some really challenging effort, and you're constantly set up for failure, that's going to be really defeating really fast, and it's not going to allow us to build momentum. If we can say, hey, this week I want to get 7 hours of sleep, whether it's one night, 2 nights, or whatever the goal is, and then we can build on that momentum. Like you said, there's gratification to it, which helps reinforce the behavior change. And then once we do build on that small habit, over time, it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger picture that we continuously build upon. So I think that's a great observation that I just wanted to highlight really quick. And I appreciate that you noticed that too, Honesty. Good call.
Yeah.
So honestly, like you did a really good job of even hitting questions before I had to ask them. So I kind of we're going to start to wrap up the concept or the questioning with, looking at, we got an idea of what you were like or what your experience was like before the app and working with me and kind of what the experience has been like. And now moving forward, some of the things we're going to carry and build. This is more of, I'm just curious on your overall experience. And then this is a fun question I always like to ask, which I think you enjoyed so far the experience, but I like to hear it from your eyes. What do you think about the experience? Is this something you would recommend, especially to the listeners out there? Would this be something that you would?
My sister and I have recommended this to people at Jazzercise, like, because we still do the whole Jazzercise thing.
Yeah,
but
Jazzercise.
Yeah, I know. We drop your name. So,
I appreciate that.
Definitely. And I'm trying to get my best friend to jump in on this because she's got a personal trainer at Planet Fitness, but she's not using it right now because none of that's access to her, And I said, this is all online. The conversations are still happening, even though I'm not going to the gym because it's not through my gym. And I think that's the biggest thing is that, if she gets discouraged, my best friend gets discouraged real easily, and she's like, no, this person helps me keep accountable each week. And I'm like, but, there's no structure to it. You just see him when you go to the gym and that's it, and so I'm like, you just try it, just try it. You try it for the first month. And I'm like, I promise you won't just like it, that I would suggest this to anybody, though. It's very hard to do it on your own, when you don't have the knowledge that you need to succeed, because you have these ideas in your head of what you think you're supposed to do, and, you just don't have the education needed to maybe be successful in the areas. And like I said, the whole workout thing, I'm working muscles that I didn't even know that I needed to work out. I had this misconception of I needed to run or I needed to do the elliptical, and there's so much other things. That 15-minute workout could be the same amount of calories that I would do on an elliptical. It was just I worked different muscles that I didn't have, and there's just some misconceptions. And so I would suggest it to anybody. Don't knock it until you try it. I wouldn't think I would be having a personal trainer online, a guy who was on the other side of the United States, but here I am. Yeah.
I appreciate that, honestly. And it honestly, I think to highlight, though, one thing that I think is important is you still show up. And that's something I want to give you props on. And even for your sister, Judy, that was one thing I wanted to highlight, is because I'll be honest, even clients I have right now or clients I've worked with in the past, it's one thing to say, hey, I want to do this. It's another thing to show up and be transparent and communicate and think, hey, I'm struggling this week, or, hey, I don't know what I'm doing with this exercise. Or to your point of like, I could do a 30-minute elliptical workout, or I could do this 15 to 20 minute, body weighted, weird movement kind of workout. And the idea is like, I'm a big fan of return on investment, whether it's financial or resource of time, which I think is even more worthwhile than money, because you don't make more time. But being able to say, hey, I can spend 15 minutes doing this interval style training. Like that workout we did yesterday is going to boost your metabolism for 48 hours versus if we were just on the elliptical. And I think there's a time and a place too, not bashing the elliptical or running. There's a time and a place, we'll work them in. But the second you stop doing that exercise, your body stops burning calories. For a lot of the movements we're doing, for 48 hours afterwards, you're still burning more calories. So there's like a bigger return on investment there. So that's something I always like to inject in and talk about whenever I can. But yeah.
I have the same thing about running. Like your body quits burning calories at that point after you get done running for a certain amount of time, and that it's not good for you in a sense. But everybody does it. But God, what was I going to say? You made some comment about having me show up, and I'm like, but it's really hard to ignore your 15 text messages at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, when I can hear my phone go ding, 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 and I'm like, that's my workout for the day. And I can't tell you how many people have commented, like, you must be really popular. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, that's just one person.
That's the other thing. I'm going to keep staying on you. And that's one thing. But the other thing I will say that you're really game about it. And what I mean by game about it is you're cool with that. Cause and this is the interesting thing I will say to some clients though. I do have some clients that are like, listen, do not do that to me. I have super crazy anxiety or whatever, whatever is going on. You may know yourself better to know what's going to set you up for success. And I have some people like, hey, I need a buddy or I need someone to help support me. And I'm not saying I'm not going to come down on people even when they say that, but we can adjust it based on what's going on. And I get to know you. So I know what's going to work for you. How can I word things to help facilitate getting you going? And yeah, I know I can go push a little bit harder with you, for example, and kind of call you out on shit or curse a little bit where I maybe not with others.
I know it's been pretty consistent it's been 2 weeks since I started doing the workouts again, but I fell off the wagon there for a minute there just because of the whole pandemic, and I didn't know what my daily life was going to be like, and it was just shutting down after I got off work. But here you are yelling at me, and all names and caps. Get my shit together, and I feel better than I have in the last 2 weeks. So that's the positive that came out of it. So, having a conversation about it, and there's a lot of mental health that goes into working out, and I never thought about it. So, it's good for you, and this has helped out with how I have felt in the last month in comparison. Just doing that one little thing at the end of the night and working out has made me feel better than I have this last month. So honestly, I felt accomplished when I get it done. Like I've actually done it.
Well, yeah, because you're putting in that work, and what's cool about it is props again. I have to highlight props to you for actually doing it, because that's something I can't do. I can't do it for you. Even when you have a trainer at the gym, like the trainer at the gym can't do the movements for you. They can bring you to the movement, show you the exercise, but they can't force you to do it. I mean, I guess they can a little bit more in person than they would virtually, but it's changing your brain chemistry. It's having all these really cool impacts on hormones and on sleep and on neurotransmitters and mood. And like you said, to the mental health side of it, I think it's just as important as the physical benefits, because it's all connected and intertwined. And even then, talking about food and the impact food can have on the bacteria in your gut, and how, like, a lot of people don't know that 90 to 95% of serotonin, which is a mood improving neurotransmitter, is produced in your gut. So if you don't take care of the foods that you're eating, the neurotransmitters that are going to actually be working in your brain are going to be impacted. You may not actually be in as good of a mood because of the foods that you're eating, which it gets into a whole nother crazy road and direction we won't maybe go into today. But again, I just wanted to highlight the work that you put in, and I appreciate you taking the time. So I want to wrap it up with giving you the platform here, honestly, to say, anything you have to share with the audience, or any shout outs or anything like that. The stage is yours.
Shout out to you and my sister for making me do stuff. Like, I don't know where I'd be. Probably, at home drinking at like 11 o'clock in the afternoon.
Maybe give a shout out to the Chiefs, right? Kansas City.
Oh, well, it's so crappy. It was short lived. And then this whole thing happened. Everybody forgot we won the Super Bowl. And now, a couple months later, take me back to February 6th when we won, and like the outstanding, how crazy the city was, and nobody cared about the pandemic. Well, it was non-existent at that point. Existent, but we didn't know about it. But that was probably the happiest day in Kansas City. So, and now we're where we're at, and we're all inside, and it's not very fun. So, but yeah, KCMO.
We're making the best of it, right? And that's where, again, I appreciate you taking the time, especially on a Saturday, talking about rest and talking about recovery and those things. I know that Saturday is a good day to recover, so I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you get back to some recovery. And yeah, go.
No, my sister's already calling me. I gotta go over there and paint that porch. So.
So yeah, maybe less of the actual full recovery, more of just kind of putting in some work with Judy, staying active and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, she's gonna have me doing stuff. I have no life.
Thanks, honestly. Appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
All right, I'll do your workout tonight, even though it's just stretching.
Yeah, getting your recovery on. All right, so I'm